Good evening, and welcome back to the Fireside. Wisdom by the Fireside. Tonight's story is about numbers and how one boy used them to survive a world that didn't understand him. It's about pain, loneliness, secrets, and how the kindness of strangers and the hand of something greater can redirect a child's fate. They said he'd never speak. They said he couldn't understand the world. But when he showed what he could do with a pencil, the whole town changed their tune. This is the story of Eli, a boy with no home, no words, and no family, until a forgotten attic, a war veteran, and a stubborn old woman proved otherwise. The year was 1957. Tulsa, Oklahoma. The kind of town where sidewalks cracked under summer heat and window fans hummed louder than radios. Eli was 10 years old, though you'd never know it by the way he shrank from eye contact. He hadn't spoken since the fire. That fire, just 6 months earlier, had taken both his parents and the only place he called home. The orphanage took him in, but didn't know what to do with him. They called him strange, slow, unreachable. Eli just stared at the walls and rocked in place. But in his mind, he wasn't staring. He was counting. Eli counted the floor tiles, the ceiling cracks, the steps it took to reach the dining hall, how long each kid chewed before swallowing, how many minutes between thunder and lightning. He was always counting, always calculating. But no one noticed until Mrs. Hattie Lou Bell, 74 years old, caught him organizing the orphanage pantry by expiration date and product cost, perfectly, silently, without being told. She blinked. "Did you do this?" Eli didn't answer. He just nodded. That's when Mrs. Hattie Lou knew. This boy wasn't broken. He was brilliant, and she made it her mission to prove it. Mrs. Hattie Lou Bell had once been Tulsa's first female postmaster general. Widowed, retired, and childless, she still wore her apron like a badge and called everyone sugar unless she was mad. Then it was just a long pause and a raised brow. But she had one great regret in life: never having raised a child of her own. And now, here was this boy, Eli, 10 years old, silent, twitchy, and brilliant. Hattie Lou spoke to the head of the orphanage. "Let me take him for a few afternoons a week. We'll call it house chores. He can help me with my grocery lists and mail." The orphanage shrugged. "If you want to try, be my guest. He won't talk, barely eats. Don't expect much." Hattie Lou smiled. "I never expect much, dear. I just let people surprise me." The first afternoon, Eli barely looked at her. The second, he reorganized her spice rack by alphabet and shelf life. By the fifth visit, he was writing ledgers in a notebook for how much she spent each month at the general store, the butcher, and the post office, down to the penny. "How'd you do this, sugar?" she asked. Eli didn't answer, but he pushed the notebook toward her. Neat, precise, no mistakes. He had never been taught this. She stared at the numbers and whispered, "You see the world different, don't you?" And For the first time since arriving at the orphanage, Eli smiled. Hattie Lou introduced Eli to her neighbor, Mr. Lionel Jensen, a Korean War veteran with a glass eye and a heart full of sorrow. Mr. Jensen didn't talk much either. He had lost his son in 1954 and never recovered. But when he saw Eli sketching multiplication tables in the dirt with a stick, something softened in him. "Boys got the mind of a quartermaster," he muttered. From that day on, Lionel began showing Eli war ledgers, ration logs, and old supply books he kept from his army days. Eli devoured them. He wasn't learning numbers. He was speaking through them. And then, one Sunday afternoon, everything changed. Eli had been sitting quietly in Hattie Lou's attic, his favorite place, when he uncovered an old leather ledger under a loose board. He opened it. His eyes scanned the entries, neat rows of names, amounts, dates, then a pattern. Eli ran downstairs shaking. "What is it, child?" Hattie Lou asked. Eli, pale and breathless, pointed at a page and finally spoke. Just one word. "Stolen." The attic fell into stunned silence. Hattie Lou looked down at the ledger Eli had handed her, pages filled with old handwritten entries from the late 1940s. It looked like a church or town fund book, but something didn't add up. Eli pointed at rows of names, then the amounts beside them, then dates, dozens of them. He tapped his finger on one row, then another, then across the columns. His breathing picked up, fingers fluttering as he made the connection clear. Same hand, different names. Hattie Lou's jaw dropped. Someone had been forging names and skimming money from a local community fund decades ago. Dozens of fake donations, all siphoning into one recurring total. "Lord in heaven," she whispered. How did you find this?" Eli didn't speak again. He just pointed at the number at the bottom of the page. $6,842.12. Missing. The ledger had belonged to her late husband, Earl Bell, former treasurer of the North Greenwood Benevolent Society. Earl had always been secretive about that fund, said it helped widows, war veterans, and orphans. But by the time he passed in 1951, most of the society's work had mysteriously gone quiet. Now, Hattie Lou understood why. "Earl didn't steal this," she murmured, "but someone close to him did, and they buried it here." She looked at Eli, this boy who barely spoke, who no one believed in, and realized he hadn't just found a ledger. He had unearthed a crime. The next day, she took the book to Mr. Lionel Jensen. He looked through it, page by page. "I know this handwriting," he said slowly. "This belonged to Hiram Cole. He was assistant treasurer, always had slick shoes and a handkerchief for a conscience." "He's still alive?" Hattie Lou asked. "Retired. Still lives off East Archer Street. Runs a pawn shop." She exhaled. "Then it's time someone pays that man a visit." She and Lionel arrived at the pawn shop the next afternoon. Eli waited in the car. They walked in. Hiram, now in his 70s, blinked in surprise. "Hattie Lou Bell? Well, I'll be—" She slammed the ledger on the counter. "Care to explain why this has your fingerprints all over it?" His smile evaporated. "You got no proof," he said flatly. But Lionel pulled out Eli's notebook, where he had replicated the numbers, tracked the forgeries, and highlighted the pattern down to the 10th of a cent. "You're looking at the work of a 10-year-old boy," Lionel said, "and it's about to bring the whole truth to light." Hiram Cole's hands trembled. The pawn shop was quiet, except for the ticking of the wall clock and the sound of Mrs. Hattie Lou's cane tapping the floor. "This is extortion," Hiram snapped. "You got no authority." But Lionel leaned in, slow and firm. "We don't need authority. We've got math, a child's math. And when I hand this to the Greenwood Gazette and the police, you'll have no customers, no credibility, and no way to sleep at night." Hiram's voice cracked. "It wasn't all me." "Tell that to the families who never got their widow checks," Hattie Lou said, her voice like sharpened velvet. He slumped onto a stool. He didn't deny it. "I was young. I didn't think it would hurt anyone. Earl died, and the money just stopped being tracked. So I kept it going, here and there. I didn't take all of it." "You took enough," she said, "but it's not about punishment now. It's about justice." She handed him a pen. "Start writing names. Start writing what's owed." Over the next month, under community pressure, Hiram gave a formal confession. The story made the local paper. Boy uncovers 20-year-old theft. Greenwood orphan exposes forgotten fund fraud. No one knew the boy's name at first. The article referred to him only as the child with the ledger. Suddenly, people noticed Eli. At the orphanage, staff stopped calling him strange. They asked for his help balancing the books. One teacher bought him his first proper calculator. Mr. Jensen gave him a dusty old typewriter, and Eli started typing out financial reports for neighborhood churches. By the age of 12, he was auditing budgets. By 14, he was tutoring local high school students in advanced algebra. But through it all, he still stayed close to Mrs. Hattie Lou. One evening, while sorting through receipts, she said softly, "Sugar, if I go before you're grown, I need to know you'll be all right." Eli looked up and whispered, "I'm gonna be someone." She nodded, eyes welling up. "You already are." Then came tragedy. In the spring of 1962, at the age of 79, Hattie Lou passed away peacefully in her sleep. Her will shocked everyone. She had left everything, her home, savings, and possessions, to Eli, the boy who taught me the value of quiet brilliance. The city tried to block it, said he was a ward of the state, but Lionel Jensen fought back. And for the second time, Eli's story made the paper. The court case was short, but passionate. Mr. Jensen stood beside Eli, who was now 15, but carried himself like someone twice his age. The judge asked, "Why should this boy be entrusted with an estate?" Lionel answered, "Because he could audit your entire docket in an afternoon." The courtroom laughed, but the judge didn't. Then Eli stepped forward, unprompted, and placed a typed report on the desk. "This is your 1959 civic budget," he said. "Line 26 is missing $1,200. I think someone's been over-reporting cost of living increases." Gasps rippled through the room. The judge stared at him, stunned. Eli simply added, "Also, the calculator in your clerk's office is broken. It's giving bad figures." He was awarded full executor rights of Hattie Lou's estate under the guardianship of Mr. Jensen. By age 18, Eli Carr was offered a full scholarship to the University of Oklahoma. He majored in accounting and statistical analysis. By 22, he had opened a financial firm that provided free tax prep and budget consulting for veterans, widows, and the elderly. He called it H&L Carr Consulting. The H was for Hattie. The L was for Lionel. When people asked where he came from, Eli never told the full story. But if you asked just right, he'd say, "I came from a fire, but someone watered the ashes." And then he'd smile. The kind of smile that makes you forget he once never spoke at all. In 1989, Eli Carr was named State Accountant of the Year, the youngest to ever receive it. He wore a brown vest and held a photograph at the podium. It showed a 10-year-old boy standing beside an old woman with a crooked smile and a man in a military jacket with a glass eye. When asked what the picture meant, Eli said, "That's where I learned value, not of money, of people." By 2025, Eli had retired. Quietly, no fanfare, but on his 78th birthday, a group of kids gathered outside his porch. One of them, holding a small leather notebook, asked, "Mr. Carr, can you teach us how to find missing numbers?" He grinned and opened the gate. "I can teach you how to find truth. That's better." Eli Carr spent his final years in the same home where it all began, Hattie Lou's old house on North Detroit Avenue, Tulsa. But it wasn't just a house anymore. It was now a community resource center. People came not just for help with taxes or audits, but to talk, to be heard, to learn how to rise quietly and powerfully like he once did. The tin box that once held a stained ledger now sat in a glass case. Above it, a plaque read, "This boy uncovered the truth that changed our town." His silence was never emptiness. It was purpose in waiting. When Eli passed away peacefully at the age of 81, a crowd gathered in the street. There were no fancy suits, no gold-plated awards, just old neighbors, young dreamers, and 24 people holding candles, many of whom had never met him, but had been touched by what he built. The local news ran his story under the headline, The boy who spoke through numbers, Eli Carr's final balance sheet. At his funeral, someone placed a feather beside his casket. No name, no card, just a quiet symbol of a soul, once dismissed, now remembered. And in a soft Oklahoma breeze, that feather floated upward, free. Moral lessons from tonight's fireside. Never underestimate the silent ones. What looks like weakness may be a different kind of strength waiting to be understood. One act of faith can change a life. Hattie Lou didn't fix Eli. She believed in him. That made all the difference. Injustice may sleep, but it never dies quietly. Even decades later, truth finds a way back to the surface, sometimes through the least expected hands. You don't need a loud voice to be heard. Eli didn't speak much, but the world listened. Legacies are not built by noise. They are built by impact, humility, and how deeply you choose to care. Thank you for listening to Eli's story tonight. We hope it lit something in your heart, as it did in ours. Thank you for being one of our little fireside circle this night. If the story touched your heart, share it to the ones you love. And if you would like to listen to more like it, you know where to find us.